The stars looked peaceful through the observation window of the Horizon's Promise. Captain Ha-Joon Kim stood on the bridge, watching the colorful gases of the Andara Nebula swirl in the distance. His research vessel had been in this quiet corner of space for 6 weeks now, studying mineral formations on nearby asteroids. Everything had gone smoothly so far. Below deck, Dr. Yuna Park worked in the science lab. She examined rock samples under a microscope, while her 2 children attended classes in the ship's small school. 16 children in total lived aboard the Horizon's Promise. Their parents were scientists, engineers, and crew members who brought their families on these long research missions. The ship felt more like a floating community than a military vessel. Ha-Joon checked the sensor displays. Nothing unusual appeared on the screens. They were far from major trade routes, far from any territory claimed by the big galactic empires. This was unclaimed space, free for peaceful research. He smiled, thinking about having dinner with his daughter Ji-woo later. She had been excited to show him a drawing she made in art class. The alarm shattered the peaceful moment. Red lights flashed across the bridge. The sensor operator shouted a warning. 3 large ships had appeared from hyperspace, surrounding them. Ha-Joon's heart dropped when he saw the design of the vessels. Velcrin Empire warships. Their weapons were already charging. Ha-Joon grabbed the communication panel. He sent a message to the Velcrin ships, explaining that they were peaceful researchers with families aboard. He asked what the Velcrin wanted. The response came quickly, cold and emotionless. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Horizon's Promise had only basic shields and no real weapons. It was a science vessel, not a warship. Ha-Joon looked at his crew. They all knew what he was thinking. If they tried to run, the Velcrin would fire on them. With children aboard, he could not take that risk. He gave the order to power down their engines and prepare for boarding. Before he did, his fingers moved quickly across a hidden panel. He activated the emergency distress beacon, sending out a signal that would reach Galactic Council space and beyond. It was their only hope. The Velcrin boarding ships attached to their hull with heavy thuds. Yuna heard the sounds from the lab and immediately ran toward the school section. Other parents did the same, all rushing to be with their children. But armed Velcrin soldiers poured into the corridors, blocking their path. The aliens were tall, with thick gray skin and 4 arms. Their weapons hummed with energy. Admiral Velcros stepped onto the bridge of the Horizon's Promise. He looked at Ha-Joon with what might have been amusement in his large black eyes. The Velcrin commander spoke in accented but clear human language. He told Ha-Joon that this region of space now belonged to the Velcrin Empire. Any ships found here would be captured. Any crew would be evaluated for usefulness. Ha-Joon kept his voice steady. He explained again that they were scientists, not soldiers. They had no conflict with the Velcrin Empire. They would leave this region immediately, if allowed. Velcros laughed. He said that humans were from a death world, a planet so dangerous that it created strong and valuable species. Humans could be sold as workers across the galaxy. But first, he needed to ensure Earth would pay for their return. Then, one of his soldiers reported something that made Velcro smile wider. There were 16 human children aboard the ship. Ha-Joon felt ice form in his chest. He stepped forward, pleading with Velcros to leave the children alone. They were innocent. They had nothing to do with galactic politics. Velcros ignored him and gave orders to his soldiers. Separate the children from the adults. Put them in a secure holding area. Chaos erupted in the school section. Teachers tried to keep the children calm, but the Velcrin soldiers were rough and frightening. They herded the crying, terrified children toward the cargo bay. Parents who tried to reach their kids were pushed back. Some were hit with neural disruptors that left them stunned and unable to move. Yuna managed to see her daughter through the crowd of soldiers. Ji-woo looked scared, but was not crying like some of the younger children. Their eyes met for just a moment before a Velcrin soldier blocked Yuna's view. She shouted her daughter's name, but another soldier threatened her with a weapon. She had no choice but to step back. Ha-Joon saw them taking Ji-woo away. His 10-year-old daughter looked back at him with wide eyes. He broke free from the guard holding him and ran toward her. He almost reached her before 3 soldiers grabbed him. He fought them, something he had never done in his life. He was a scientist, not a fighter. But these were his daughter and his crew's children. A neural disruptor hit him in the back. Pain exploded through his body and he fell to the floor. Through blurry vision, he saw Jiwoo reach out toward him. A soldier pulled her away. Hajun tried to get up, tried to move, but his body would not respond. He could only watch as they took his daughter and disappeared around a corner. The children were locked in a cold cargo hold. The room was meant for equipment, not people. There were no beds, just hard metal floor. One dim light flickered overhead. The younger children cried for their parents. Some of the older ones tried to comfort them, but everyone was scared. Jiwoo sat with her back against the wall. Her heart pounded and her hands shook. She wanted to cry too, wanted to call for her father and mother, but she remembered something her dad always said. In an emergency, stay calm, think clearly, help others if you can. She took a deep breath and looked around at the other children. A 6-year-old boy named Daewon was crying the hardest. Jiwoo moved over to him and put her arm around his shoulders. She told him it would be okay. Their parents were smart and brave. Help would come. She did not know if she believed her own words, but Daewon's crying became quieter. One by one, the other children moved closer to Jiwoo. She became their center, their source of calm in the terrifying situation. She started telling them a story, something her father told her once about brave explorers who overcame impossible challenges. The children listened, finding comfort in her steady voice. Meanwhile, the adult crew members were locked in a different section of the Velkrin flagship. Hajun recovered from the neural disruptor after an hour. Every part of his body ached. Yuna found him and they held each other. Around them, other parents were in various states of panic and despair. Hajun forced himself to focus. The distress beacon was active. Someone would receive their signal. The Galactic Council had laws protecting non-combatants. They had laws protecting children. Help would come. It had to. Light years away, the distress signal reached the Galactic Council headquarters. Counselor Thex reviewed the message. It came from a human ship claiming to be attacked and held hostage by Velkrin forces. Children were mentioned as being in danger. Thex dismissed the message with barely a thought. Humans were Deathworlders, always fighting among themselves and with others. This was probably some internal dispute, perhaps even criminals trying to get Council help for their illegal activities. He marked the message as low priority and moved on to other matters. But the signal reached somewhere else too, deep in space, in a location no civilian knew about. The message was received by a different kind of ship. Commander Taeyang Lee sat in the command chair of the Silent Fury, a vessel that officially did not exist. He read the distress signal 3 times. Children, 16 human children held hostage. Taeyang's jaw tightened. He immediately opened a secure channel to Earth Command. His message was brief. The situation was critical. He was requesting authorization to deploy the hidden fleet. Back on the Velkrin flagship, Admiral Velkros composed a message to Earth. His words were simple and cruel. He had captured a human research vessel and its crew. More importantly, he had 16 human children in his custody. Earth would provide technology, resources, and payment if they wanted these humans returned safely. If Earth refused or tried to attack, the children would be sold to various buyers across the galaxy. He sent the message and smiled. Deathworlders were primitive, but they seemed to care about their young. This would be profitable. He ordered his crew to prepare for negotiations. In the cold cargo hold, Jiwoo looked up at the ceiling. She wondered if her father had managed to send a distress signal. She wondered if anyone was coming to help them. She held Daewon closer and continued her story, keeping the children distracted from their fear. She did not know that her small act of bravery was only the beginning. She did not know that far across the galaxy, forces were already moving. She did not know that Admiral Velkros had made the worst mistake any being could make. He had threatened human children. Ambassador Min Seo Choi rushed through the halls of the Galactic Council building. Her assistant struggled to keep up with her quick pace. News of the Horizon's promised capture had reached Earth's diplomatic mission only hours ago. She had immediately requested an emergency session with the council. They had granted her 10 minutes. The council chamber was a massive circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated areas. At the center stood a platform where speakers addressed the assembly. Mincio stepped onto that platform now, her hands gripping a data tablet containing all the evidence she needed. She began speaking, her voice clear and steady despite her racing heart. She presented the facts. A human research vessel conducting peaceful scientific work in unclaimed space had been attacked without provocation. The crew had been taken hostage. 16 children, the youngest only 5 years old, were being held in terrible conditions. This was a clear violation of galactic law protecting non-combatants. She showed images from the distress signal, pictures of the Horizon's Promise and its crew. She showed the council records of the ship's research permits and peaceful mission objectives. She provided testimony from other vessels that had seen the human ship working quietly in that region for weeks. There was no doubt about the facts. This was kidnapping. This was hostage-taking. This demanded council intervention. When she finished, Counselor Thex rose from his seat. The tall, thin alien looked down at Mincio with what she recognized as disdain. He spoke in the formal language of council proceedings, but his meaning was clear. Humans came from a death world. They were known for violence and conflict. Perhaps this was a dispute between human factions. Perhaps these were criminals trying to manipulate the council into helping them. Mincio felt anger surge through her. She controlled it, keeping her voice professional. She pointed out that the Velcrin Empire had attacked the vessel. This was not a human dispute. This was an act of aggression by an empire against innocent civilians. She reminded the council that they had laws for exactly this situation. Another counselor spoke up, agreeing with Thex. The species from peaceful worlds often viewed Deathworlders with suspicion and fear. They argued that sending council forces into Velcrin space could start a larger conflict. Was it worth risking a galactic incident over what might be internal human problems? Mincio could not believe what she was hearing. She reminded them again about the children. 16 innocent children who had done nothing wrong. Did the council's laws not apply to them because they were human? Because they came from Earth? Thex responded coldly. The council had limited resources. They could not respond to every distress call from every species, especially when the facts were unclear. He recommended that Earth handle this matter through their own diplomatic channels with the Velcrin Empire. The motion to intervene was formally denied. Mincio stood on the platform for a long moment looking at the counselors. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked relieved that the decision was made. A few, like Thex, looked satisfied. She gathered her materials slowly, deliberately. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but carried through the entire chamber. She told them they had made a mistake. She told them they would remember this day. She told them that when this was over, when the truth came out about what really happened, the council would understand exactly what they had done by refusing to help. Then she walked out of the chamber with her head high. Aboard the Velcrin flagship, conditions were getting worse for the hostages. The adult crew members were kept in a large holding area with minimal food and water. The room was cold and uncomfortable. Yuna sat against a wall, trying to hear any sounds that might tell her where her daughter was being kept. Sometimes she thought she could hear children crying through the metal walls. Each time her heart broke a little more. Ajun sat beside her, his face bruised from the neural disruptor hit and the fight with the guards. He had been organizing the crew, making plans for a possible escape attempt. But they all knew it was dangerous. If they tried and failed, Velcros might hurt the children. In the cargo hold where the children were kept, Jiwoo had discovered something important. There was an air vent near the ceiling. The metal grate covering it looked loose. She was small and thin enough to fit through it if she could get it open, but she would not leave the other children behind. Instead, she used the vent for something else. When the guards were not looking, she climbed up using boxes stacked in the corner. She pushed the grate aside just enough to peer through. The vent led to other parts of the ship. Through it, she could hear the Velcrin guards talking. She listened carefully, learning their schedules and routines. She learned that they changed shifts every 6 hours. She learned that 3 guards watched the children during the day, but only 1 at night. She learned that Velcros was planning something big, waiting for a response from Earth. She memorized everything, thinking that maybe this information could help when rescue came. Admiral Velcros was indeed planning something. Several days had passed since he sent his ransom demand to Earth. There had been no response. This confused and angered him. Surely humans cared about their young. Why was Earth silent? He decided that his message had not been convincing enough. He needed to show Earth that he was serious. He needed to demonstrate that these children were truly in danger. He called his security chief and gave orders. Select one child for a recorded message. Make it clear what would happen if Earth continued to ignore his demands. Guards entered the cargo hold. The children immediately huddled together, frightened. The lead guard scanned them with his eyes, looking for the right choice. A young child would make the best impact. He pointed at little Daewon, the 6-year-old who had cried so much. Jiwoo stepped in front of Daewon before the guard could reach him. She stood as tall as she could and said clearly that she would go instead. The guard looked at her with surprise. This small human child was offering herself? It did not matter to him. One child was the same as another for the message. He grabbed Jiwoo's arm and pulled her toward the door. The other children cried out. Daewon tried to pull Jiwoo back, but she told him to stay with the others. She told them all to be brave. She told them help was coming. Then the door closed behind her and she was alone with the guards. They brought her to a room where Velcros waited with recording equipment. The Admiral looked down at her with his cold black eyes. He told her to stand in front of the camera. He told her he would ask her questions and she would answer honestly. If she did not cooperate, things would be worse for the other children. Jiwoo was terrified, but she remembered her father's words again. Stay calm, think clearly. She nodded and stood where Velcros indicated. The recording began. Velcros spoke into the camera, addressing Earth directly. He showed Jiwoo's frightened face. He said that this child and 15 others were in his custody. He said that Earth had 24 hours to respond with payment and technology transfers. If they refused, the children would be sold separately to various buyers across the galaxy. They would never see their families again. He asked Jiwoo to state her name and her parents' names. She did, her voice shaking but clear. He asked if she understood what would happen if Earth did not comply. She said yes. Then he asked if she had anything to say to Earth. This was meant to break her, to make her beg and plead on camera. Jiwoo looked directly into the camera. She thought about her father and mother. She thought about all the stories her dad told her about human bravery and determination. She spoke clearly. She said that she and the other children were scared but okay. She said they trusted that Earth would do the right thing. She said they were staying strong. It was not the desperate plea Velcros wanted, but it was powerful in its own way. The strength in the child's eyes, the lack of total despair. It showed human resilience even in terrible circumstances. Velcros ended the recording and had Jiwoo return to the cargo hold. The message was broadcast across multiple frequencies. It reached Earth within hours. It also reached the Galactic Council. Counselor Thex watched it in his private office. For the first time, he felt a small seed of doubt. This was clearly real. These were truly innocent children in danger. But he had already made the Council's position clear. He could not reverse the decision without looking weak and foolish. He filed the message in the records and tried to forget about it. He told himself that humans would handle it themselves somehow. It was not his problem anymore. What Thex did not see were the immediate reactions across human space. Every human colony, every station, every ship received the broadcast. They saw Jiwoo's brave face. They saw Velcros's cruel threat. And they saw something that made their blood boil. The galaxy had refused to help. The Council had turned its back on human children. Ambassador Minseo Choi stood before the Galactic Council one last time. This was not a request for help. This was a formal statement. She told them that Earth had given them a chance to resolve this situation through proper diplomatic channels. They had refused. They had abandoned innocent children to their fate because of prejudice against Deathworlders. Commander Taeyang Lee walked through the corridors of the Silent Fury with steady, measured steps. His crew stood at attention as he passed. They all knew what was coming. Some of them had served on this ship for 15 years, waiting for a moment they hoped would never arrive. But it had arrived, and now they would do what they were built to do. The briefing room filled quickly. Officers from every department took their seats. The large display screen showed a tactical map of Velcrin space. Red markers indicated the position of the Velcrin flagship where the hostages were held. Blue markers showed something else. Hundreds of them. They surrounded Velcrin territory completely. Taeyang began speaking. He told his crew what many of them already suspected. The Silent Fury was not alone. It had never been alone. For 30 years, Earth had been building a defensive fleet in absolute secrecy. While the galaxy watched human colonies and trade ships, while they dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers, Earth had been preparing. Every human colony had hidden guardians. Ships equipped with cloaking technology that made them invisible to all known sensors. Weapons that were decades ahead of anything the galactic empires possessed. Earth had learned from history. They had learned that appearing weak while building strength was the best way to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Now that strategy was ending. The secret was about to be revealed because 16 children needed rescue. Tae-Yang explained the fleet composition. 20 battleships like the Silent Fury, 40 destroyer-class vessels, 80 frigates, 200 support craft, all converging on Velkrine space at maximum speed. The tactical officer asked the obvious question. Why reveal everything for one research vessel? Why not send a small strike team? Tae-Yang's answer was simple. Because Earth had given the Galactic Council a chance to handle this correctly. The Council had refused because of prejudice against humans. Now the galaxy would learn that refusing to protect human children was the worst mistake they could make. The fleet would not just rescue the hostages. It would send a message. Humanity was done hiding. They were done being dismissed as primitive. They were done accepting second-class status in galactic society. This operation would change everything. Aboard the Velkrine flagship, Captain Ha-Joon Kim was working on his own plan. Over several days, he and other crew members had managed to smuggle small components from different parts of the ship. A wire here. A circuit board there. Guards had searched them regularly but missed the tiny pieces. Ha-Joon had assembled these pieces into a crude but functional device. It was a signal transmitter, weak and short range, but it might work. He kept it hidden in his clothes, waiting for the right moment to use it. He had no way to know if Earth had received their distress signal. He had no way to know if help was coming. But he had to believe. He had to have hope. One night, Ha-Joon decided to attempt an escape. Not a full breakout. That would be too dangerous with the children at risk. But he needed to get closer to where the children were held. He needed to know they were okay. Using tools they had hidden, several crew members managed to override the lock on their holding area door. They moved quietly through the dark corridors. Yuna stayed close to Ha-Joon, her heart pounding. They found a maintenance shaft that led toward the cargo area where the children were kept. They were so close. Ha-Joon could almost feel his daughter's presence. Then alarms blared. Red lights flashed everywhere. Velkrine guards poured into the corridor from both directions. Ha-Joon realized someone must have noticed their absence during a routine check. They had no choice but to surrender again. But as the guards forced them back to their cell, Ha-Joon managed to place his small transmitter device in a crack in the wall. It was activated now, sending out a weak signal that said help was needed urgently. In the children's cargo hold, Ji-Woo heard the alarms and commotion. She climbed up to her air vent position and listened. Through the vent, she heard guards talking about the escape attempt. She heard them mention that the adult prisoners had tried to reach the cargo section. That meant her parents had tried to get to her. She also heard something else. One guard was complaining about sensor ghosts at the edge of Velkrine space, strange readings that appeared and disappeared. The other guard dismissed it as equipment malfunction. But Ji-Woo remembered something from her science classes. Her mother had taught her about different types of sensors and how advanced cloaking technology could create exactly those kinds of ghost readings. Could it be? Was someone out there? She climbed down from the vent and gathered the other children around her. She told them that she had a feeling help was coming soon. They needed to stay strong just a little longer. The children wanted to believe her. Some did. Others were losing hope after so many days in captivity. Far above the Velkrine flagship, in the cold darkness of space, the Earth fleet was indeed arriving. One by one, ships dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates Tae-Yang had designated. They remained cloaked, invisible to Velkrine sensors. The fleet formed a perfect sphere around Velkrine territory with the flagship at the center. Taeyang received reports from all ship commanders. Everyone was in position. The cyber warfare teams had already begun infiltrating Velcrin communication networks. Within minutes, they had accessed the flagship systems. Taeyang now had a complete layout of the ship. He knew exactly where the hostages were held. More importantly, his team detected Hajun's improvised transmitter. The signal was weak, but clear. It included a code that identified Hajun as the sender and marked the transmission as urgent. Taeyang smiled slightly. The captain of the research vessel was resourceful. That would make the rescue easier. Taeyang had his communications officer send an encrypted response directly to Hajun's device. The message was brief. Help had arrived. The fleet was in position. Prepare hostages for extraction. Maintain calm. Do not attempt any action that might endanger the children. In his cell, Hajun's hidden device suddenly vibrated. He pulled it out carefully, making sure no guards were watching. The small screen showed a message. His eyes filled with tears. They had come. Earth had sent help. He quickly spread the word to the other prisoners. Relief flooded through the group. Some people cried, others prayed. All of them felt hope for the first time since their capture. Yuna managed to move close to the wall that separated them from the children's holding area. She knocked on the metal in a pattern she and Jiwoo had used since her daughter was small. 3 quick knocks, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. It was their secret code for I love you. On the other side of the wall, Jiwoo heard the knocking. Her heart leaped. She knocked back the same pattern. Then she knocked another sequence. 1 knock, pause, 4 knocks. Their code for I am okay. She pressed her hand against the cold metal wall, imagining her mother's hand on the other side. Admiral Velcro sat in his command center, unaware of everything happening around him. He was growing impatient with Earth's continued silence. It had been over a week since he sent his ransom demand. Even the threatening video with the child had produced no response. This confused him deeply. He contacted the Galactic Council again, demanding they pressure Earth to negotiate. Counselor Thex responded personally. He informed Velcros that the Council had officially declined to intervene in what they considered a human matter. Velcros was free to handle the situation as he saw fit. Velcros actually laughed at this news. The Council had given him permission to do whatever he wanted with these Deathworlder hostages. Perfect. He ordered his officers to prepare a celebration feast. They would enjoy their victory while deciding how best to profit from selling the humans. His tactical officer interrupted the celebration planning with a nervous report. Long-range sensors were detecting unusual energy signatures. Multiple contacts at the edge of their territory. Velcros waved dismissively. Probably sensor errors. Their equipment needed maintenance. He ordered the officer to run diagnostics and not bother him with technical problems. The tactical officer ran the diagnostics. The readings remained. More contacts were appearing. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. He reported this to Velcros again, more urgently this time. Velcros finally looked at the sensor data himself. His confidence wavered. These readings were too consistent to be errors. He ordered a full sensor sweep of the surrounding space. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then his tactical officer's face went pale. He looked at Velcros with wide eyes and said 3 words that changed everything. Ships. Thousands of ships. Across the entire Velcrin fleet, sensors suddenly registered massive energy signatures. Commander Taeyang had given the order. Every ship in the Earth fleet dropped its cloaking systems simultaneously. In an instant, the Velcrin found themselves surrounded by a force they had never imagined existed. Battleships larger than anything in the Velcrin Navy. Destroyers bristling with weapon arrays. Fighter wings numbering in the thousands. All of them bearing Earth's symbols. All of them in perfect formation. All of them focused on Velcrin space like a closing fist. Velcro stared at his view screen in absolute shock. This was impossible. Humans were primitive. They were newcomers to galactic civilization. They had small colonies and merchant ships. They did not have armadas. They did not have military technology that could hide from Velcrin sensors. Admiral Velcro stared at the human fleet surrounding his territory. His tactical officers waited for orders, but he could not think clearly. Fear and confusion clouded his judgment. This could not be real. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be primitive Deathworlders with basic technology. His pride would not let him believe what his eyes showed him. This had to be some kind of trick. Maybe these ships were empty hulls just for show. Maybe the humans were bluffing, hoping he would surrender without a fight. Yes, that must be it. Deathworlders were known for cunning and deception. He gave orders to his fleet. Attack the nearest human vessels. Show these primitives the power of the Velcrin Empire. His officers looked at him with concern, but they obeyed. 50 Velcrin warships powered up their weapons and began moving toward the Earth fleet. On the bridge of the Silent Fury, Commander Taeyang Li watched the Velcrin ships advance. He had expected this. Arrogance and pride often made people stupid. He opened a channel to the Velcrin flagship one more time. His voice was calm, almost sad. He warned Velcros that attacking would be a mistake. He urged the Admiral to think about his crew, his people, his future. Surrender the hostages peacefully and no one would be harmed. Velcros cut off the communication. His warships opened fire. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward the Earth vessels. The attack was powerful, the kind that could cripple stations and destroy smaller ships. The Velcrin crew watched their sensors, waiting to see the human ships explode. Nothing happened. The Earth ship's defensive shields absorbed every hit without showing any sign of damage. The energy readings from those shields were beyond anything Velcrin technology could produce. Taeyang shook his head slowly. He had given them a chance. Now he would give them a demonstration. He ordered his weapons officer to respond with minimal force, just enough to prove a point. The officer acknowledged and targeted 3 Velcrin warships that were leading the attack. One shot. A single railgun projectile was fired from the Silent Fury's main cannon. The projectile moved at a significant fraction of light speed. It struck the first Velcrin warship, passed completely through it, then hit the second ship, passed through that one too, and finally disabled the third ship before its momentum was spent. All 3 warships went dark, their systems overloaded and their hulls breached. Their crews survived, but the ships were completely disabled. One shot. 3 warships. The Velcrin fleet stopped advancing immediately. Taeyang opened communications again. This time his voice had an edge to it. He explained that the Earth fleet had weapons technology decades beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Humanity had spent years developing their military in secret, while everyone dismissed them as primitive. The Velcrin now had 30 minutes to comply with his demands. If they refused again, the response would not be so gentle. Aboard the Velcrin flagship, panic was spreading. Officers shouted reports about the 3 disabled ships. Engineers tried to understand how one projectile could do so much damage. Velcros felt his confidence crumbling. He had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not primitive. They were not weak. They were dangerous beyond anything he had imagined. He gave immediate orders. Prepare the human hostages for release. Get them ready for transfer to the Earth ships. His officers rushed to obey. Guards were sent to the holding areas with instructions to treat the prisoners carefully. Do not harm them. Do not provoke them. Just prepare them for departure. But one guard did not get the updated orders in time. He had been told earlier to sedate the children for transport, to keep them quiet and manageable. He entered the cargo hold where the children were kept and began preparing injection devices with sedative drugs. Jiwoo saw what the guard was doing and understood immediately. She had seen medical injections before, but these looked different. The guard's body language was aggressive, not careful like a doctor would be. She shouted at the other children to move back, to stay away from the guard. In the adult holding area, Ha-Jun's device suddenly activated. The signal was automatic, triggered by elevated stress indicators from the children's section. The device sent an emergency alert directly to the Earth fleet. Taeyang received it instantly. The message was clear. Children in immediate danger. Taeyang did not hesitate. He did not wait for Velcros to comply. He did not give another warning. His cyber warfare team had already mapped every system on the Velcrin flagship. They activated their prepared infiltration programs. Within seconds, they had complete control of the ship. Every door lock on the flagship responded to Earth commands now. Every security system was bypassed. Every sensor fed information directly to Taeyang's tactical display. He could see exactly where each hostage was located. He could see the guard approaching the children with sedatives. He made his decision. 30 human Marines materialized inside the Velcrin flagship. The teleportation technology was something the galaxy had thought impossible. The Marines appeared in full combat armor, equipped with weapons and scanning gear. Their mission was simple: secure all human hostages, neutralize any threats, extract everyone safely. The Marines moved through the ship like ghosts. Their armor had active camouflage that made them nearly invisible. They stunned every Velcrin guard they encountered before the guards even knew they were there. No killing, no permanent harm, just efficient incapacitation. This was a rescue mission, not a massacre. The first team reached the children's cargo hold. They breached the door with a controlled charge that made noise but caused no dangerous shrapnel. The guard inside spun around in surprise, still holding the sedative injector. A Marine stunned him before he could take a step. The children screamed at first, seeing armored figures burst into the room. Then one Marine removed her helmet. She was human. She smiled at the children and spoke in a gentle voice. She told them they were safe now. They were going home. The relief on the children's faces was immediate and overwhelming. Many started crying. Some laughed. All of them rushed toward the Marines. Jiwoo did not cry. She helped the Marines count the children and make sure everyone was accounted for. She told them about Daewon's asthma and another child's food allergy. The Marines listened carefully and made notes. One of them put his hand on Jiwoo's shoulder and told her she had been very brave. She would make a good Marine someday if she wanted. The second Marine team reached the adult holding area. They breached that door just as efficiently. Hajun looked up to see armored humans entering the cell. He stood slowly, hardly believing it was real. One Marine told him they were from the Earth Defense Fleet. All hostages would be extracted within minutes. Yuna immediately asked about the children. The Marine confirmed that the children had been secured first and were safe. Yuna's legs nearly gave out from relief. Hajun caught her and held her steady. Other parents reacted the same way. After so many days of fear and uncertainty, they could finally breathe again. The Marines organized the hostages for teleportation extraction. They moved in groups of 5, disappearing in shimmers of light and reappearing aboard Earth ships. Medical teams were waiting to examine everyone and provide care. The entire operation took less than 20 minutes from the moment the Marines arrived to the moment the last hostage was safe. Admiral Velcros tried to flee to his personal escape pod. He found it completely non-functional. The Earth cyber team had disabled every escape system on the ship. He tried to use the communication array to call for help. That was disabled too. He tried to access his own command codes. They did not work anymore. He was trapped on his own flagship, powerless, while humans walked through his ship and took back their people. His crew watched in stunned silence as the Marines withdrew just as efficiently as they had arrived. Not a single Velcrin had been killed. They had all been simply stunned, disarmed, and bypassed. The message was clear. Earth could have killed them all but chose not to. Aboard the Silent Fury, Jiwoo ran through the corridors. A Marine guided her to the medical bay where her parents were being examined. She burst through the door and saw her father. He turned at the sound and his face transformed with joy. He dropped to his knees and opened his arms. Jiwoo ran to him and they held each other, both crying now. Yuna joined them a moment later. The family embraced together, safe at last. Around them, other families were reuniting. The medical bay was full of tears and laughter and relief. Medical staff worked quietly around the emotional scenes, checking vital signs and providing comfort. Commander Taeyang Lee entered the medical bay and found Hajun. The research captain looked up at the military commander with gratitude in his eyes. He started to thank Taeyang, but the commander stopped him. There was no need for thanks. Protecting humans was what the fleet existed to do. Hajun and his crew were brave and resourceful. They had kept everyone alive until help arrived. Taeyang knelt down to Jiwoo's level. He told her that she had done something remarkable. She had kept the other children calm and gathered important information. She had volunteered herself to protect the younger ones. Those were the actions of a true hero. Jiwoo blushed but smiled. She asked if all Earthships were as big as this one. Taeyang laughed and told her this was actually one of the medium-sized vessels. If she wanted, he could show her around the ship later. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other. Emergency sessions had been called and called again. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy about Earth's massive hidden fleet. The numbers seemed impossible. Thousands of ships, technology decades beyond known standards, military capability that rivaled the largest empires, and humanity had hidden all of it. For 30 years they had appeared weak while building strength. They had accepted second-class status while preparing for the day they would demand respect. That day had arrived. Counselor Thex sat in his designated seat, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on him. He had been the one to dismiss Earth's plea for help. He had been the one to call it an internal human matter. He had been the one to convince other counselors that Deathworlders did not deserve council protection. Now his political career was ending in disgrace. Ambassador Minseo Choi entered the chamber. Unlike her previous appearances, she did not stand on the speaker's platform. She walked directly to the council's central podium, a position usually reserved for council leadership. No one stopped her. No one dared. The balance of power had shifted dramatically. She began speaking without waiting for permission. Her voice was calm but carried absolute authority. She stated the facts clearly. The Galactic Council had refused to protect human children because of prejudice against Deathworlders. They had abandoned innocent civilians to their fate. They had proven that council laws did not apply equally to all species. Earth had given them a chance to do the right thing. They had refused. So Earth had acted independently. The hidden fleet was revealed out of necessity, but now that the secret was exposed, everything would change. Humanity would no longer hide its strength. Humanity would no longer accept prejudice and discrimination. Minesio presented detailed recordings from the rescue operation. The council watched in silence as Earth's Marines teleported into the Velcrin flagship. They watched the precision and discipline of the operation. They watched how not a single Velcrin was killed, despite having the power to destroy the entire fleet. They watched human technology that should not exist for another century at least. One counselor, braver or more foolish than the others, asked the obvious question. Why had Earth built such a fleet in secret? Why hide such power? Minseo's answer was simple. Because the galaxy had shown again and again that it feared and discriminated against Deathworlders. Earth had learned from history. Appearing weak while building strength was the only way to survive long enough to become strong. Another counselor asked if Earth intended conquest. The question hung in the air. Minseo looked at the assembled representatives. She told them that if Earth wanted conquest, they could achieve it. The fleet could overwhelm any single empire. The technology could defeat any alliance. But that was not who humans were. They did not want to rule the galaxy. They wanted to be respected as equals. They wanted their citizens protected under galactic law. The council realized the truth. Humanity had just demonstrated overwhelming power, and then chosen not to use it for gain. They had rescued their people and left everything else intact. That restraint was perhaps more terrifying than the power itself. It showed discipline. It showed long-term thinking. It showed that humans were not the primitive, emotional Deathworlders the galaxy had believed them to be. Commander Tae-Yang Lee appeared via holographic communication. He stood on the bridge of the Silent Fury, still positioned in Velcrin space. He provided his report to the council. He explained Earth's strategic philosophy. Build strength quietly, avoid unnecessary conflicts, but protect human citizens at all costs. The council's failure to help had forced Earth's hand. Now the galaxy would adapt to a new reality. Aboard the Silent Fury's medical facilities, the rescued hostages were recovering well. Jiwoo had been examined by doctors who declared her healthy despite her ordeal. She had been brave and strong, but she was still a child who had been through something traumatic. A counselor sat with her, gently helping her process what had happened. Hajun and Yuna stayed close to their daughter. They had been given quarters on the ship where they could stay together as a family. Other crew members and their children were housed nearby. The ship's staff made sure everyone had comfortable beds, good food, and whatever support they needed. Jiwoo asked her father if they would go back to research work. Hajun smiled and said yes. Space was still full of mysteries to explore. Science was still important. But now they would have protection. Never again would human civilians be vulnerable like that. The fleet was revealed now. Everyone knew Earth's strength. Back in council chambers, Admiral Velcros appeared via secure transmission. He had been summoned to testify about the incident. He stood before the council, stripped of his rank and authority, and told them everything. He described how easily Earth's fleet had surrounded and disabled his forces. He described technology he could not understand. He described the precision and restraint of human soldiers who could have killed everyone but chose mercy. He admitted his arrogance. He admitted underestimating Deathworlders, and he warned the entire council that humanity was not to be threatened. Their protective instinct toward children was absolute. Their military capability was overwhelming. Their patience had limits. The galaxy needed to understand these facts before anyone else made his mistake. The Velcrin Empire issued formal apologies to Earth. They agreed to pay reparations to the hostages and their families. They agreed to strict oversight to ensure nothing like this happened again. They had no choice. Earth's fleet could have destroyed them completely. The fact that Earth showed mercy did not mean Earth would always show mercy. The Council proposed sweeping changes to galactic law. New protections for non-combatants, stricter penalties for hostage-taking, clear enforcement mechanisms. But Minseo was not satisfied with proposals. She insisted on human oversight of enforcement. Earth's fleet would remain active and visible as a guarantee that these laws would be upheld for all species, not just those the Council favored. The Councilors agreed. They had no real choice. The alternative was admitting that Council laws were meaningless. That galactic civilization was just a pretense covering prejudice and power games. Earth had forced them to either live up to their stated ideals or abandon the pretense entirely. Councillor Thex requested a private meeting with Ambassador Choi. They met in a small conference room, just the two of them. Thex looked tired and defeated. He apologized to Minseo personally. He admitted his prejudice against Deathworlders had blinded him to the truth. He had nearly caused a catastrophe that would have shamed the Council forever. Minseo listened without expression. When he finished, she told him that his apology meant nothing if his behavior did not change. The Council had to prove through actions that they had learned their lesson. Words were easy. Protection and respect required commitment. She told him that Earth would be watching. Every human citizen in the galaxy would be watching. The Council would not get another chance to make this right. Months passed. The galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Human warships patrolled major trade routes. Piracy rates dropped dramatically. Criminal organizations that preyed on vulnerable species found themselves facing Earth's military might. Species that had once mocked humans now sought them as allies and trading partners. The Horizon's promise was repaired and upgraded. It returned to its scientific mission, studying minerals and mapping space, but now an Earth destroyer escorted it. Commander Taeyang Li made sure that every human research vessel, every colony ship, every trade convoy had military protection. Never again would humans be vulnerable to capture and extortion. Captain Ha-Jun Kim stood on the bridge of his research vessel again. It felt good to be back doing what he loved. His crew had recovered from their ordeal, though some still had nightmares. Counseling continued for everyone who needed it. Yuna had returned to her laboratory work, making new discoveries about mineral formations, and Ji-Woo attended school on the ship again, along with the other children. But she was different now. She paid special attention during emergency drills. She asked questions about ship systems and security protocols. She kept in touch with Commander Taeyang Li through regular communications. She had decided what she wanted to do when she grew up. One day, Ji-Woo told her parents about her decision. She wanted to join the Earth Defense Fleet. She wanted to serve on ships like the Silent Fury. She wanted to protect other humans the way they had been protected. Ha-Jun and Yuna looked at each other with mixed emotions. Pride, worry, understanding. They told their daughter that she had time to decide. But if that was truly her path, they would support her. Years later, Earth's diplomatic influence in the galaxy had grown tremendously. Other species realized that humans were valuable allies. They brought advanced technology, strong military support, and unwavering loyalty to their friends. The prejudice against Deathworlders had not disappeared completely, but it had diminished significantly. The Council itself had reformed. New councilors replaced many of the old guard. Laws protecting all species were enforced equally now, with human observers ensuring compliance. The galaxy was not perfect, but it was better, fairer, more just.